FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is July 8th, 2019. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend like I did, and hope the weather was good by you. It was great down here, almost too great, but you know how that is. And well, it's all about preparing. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Don't forget our Bitcoin contest. It's in full swing. I've gotten hundreds and hundreds of entries, and here's the deal. The prizes first, because that's the most important thing. 40 pre-1965 U.S. quarters for the winner. And the winner is the person that gets closest to what the price of Bitcoin will be on July 20th at midnight. And you got to get closer than my guess, which is 66.50. It looks like you could do 66.51, but you got to be the closest one, of course. Who knows what it'll be? And the runner-up, 5 runner-ups get 1 quarter each. If we break 1,000 entries, and we might just do it, then the prizes go up to grand prize of 100 pre-1965, 90% silver quarters, and each runner-up will receive 10. The first 5 of them, that is. The email address to enter, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, person you're about to hear from, he doesn't leave much to chance. He's got a plan. He's got a strategy. You got to wonder, as he was just telling me, if we're in the midst of this phenomenal recovery, things are so great, why is the president asking the Fed to cut rates? Why do we want negative interest rates? That's the question. Well, to find out the answer, it's Jerry Robinson, followthemoney.com. Jerry, so what are they telling us here?
Hey, well, first of all, it's great to be back on your program, Kerry. I've been a big, longtime fan of the work you do. I know you're one of the hard workers out there trying to spread the word about financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility. So, thanks for what you do. And thanks for having me back on. I think you do bring up a great point. The fact that we have an economy right now that if you listen to just the headlines, all depends which side of the headlines you listen to. Today, we have such a fragmented society where we live in echo chambers. So if you are on the right and you're listening to the headlines, you're hearing the lowest unemployment for blacks, the lowest unemployment for Hispanics, the lowest unemployment here, and on and on and on. And things had never been better. Good days or happy days are here again. Good times ahead. If you listen to the other side, there's not a whole lot of real good criticism of this economy. In fact, you really kind of have to just go to common sense and actually look at the actual data to get any real information the way it usually has been. And what we see when we look at the U.S. economy is we may see record low unemployment for some people groups, but we also have record trade deficit, never reached this high before. We also have a record budget deficit, never seen the kind of levels of budget deficit over the last few months that we've seen ever in the history of the United States. We have a record national debt. Never seen the national debt this high. We don't have a budget in Washington. There's no plan to take care of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There's no plan at all whatsoever. We don't know what they're going to do with health care. We still don't know what the Republican health care plan is, aside from going on and on about how negative other ideas and plans are. And so we have all of these things kind of swirling around, and yet we're told that this is the best economy. We've never had a better economy. And yet at the same exact time, Kerry, the Federal Reserve just in June has really done a full-blown U-turn. They began doing this in December and January, but they've really done a full-blown U-turn, going from this place where rates were not quite at the neutral level. They had to keep raising rates. Now suddenly they had to pause rates in January because the stock market went down. And then we fast forward to June and we find out that from the FOMC, the Federal Reserve, that they're planning on potentially cutting rates. They didn't actually use those words, but they used the word accommodative. And we all know what that means. And we know that the stock market now, according to the CME, Fed Watch, the Fed rates futures market is showing that we're going to very likely see a 100% chance of a rate cut at the July meeting. And the Fed typically doesn't disappoint those predictions like that they would probably tank the market if they did. So they have to pay attention to those. So we're talking about a rate cut. And if you look at Mr. Trump's Twitter feed, you'll find out that he's not satisfied with just one rate cut. He wants negative interest rates. He wants to devalue the dollar. He wants to bring the value of the dollar down so we can compete with other nations like China and of course, the European Union, which is also using a pretty stealth monetary technique to kind of hold itself afloat. So in essence, what you have is a raging bull market in stocks. We break out to new all-time highs, but you also have gold rising in this environment too. And you also have some of these other traditional hedges kind of running up too. This big bull market rally, by the way, has really been led by real estate sector, utility sector, and partially the technology sector. But we track stock market sectors and we use a sector rotation strategy, Kerry. We just kind of move out at every 3 months. That's one of our strategies we use. And it's been amazing to see that during this whole, massive bull market rally that we've had, utilities and real estate have been leading the way. I mean, those are traditionally very defensive. So that kind of gives you an indication of maybe what investors are feeling. So you have this greatest economy ever, quote unquote. You have the Fed now talking about cutting rates, first time in more than a decade. It obviously has investors feeling pretty strange. I think personally, we just cut through all of this. I think personally, Kerry, that we are toward the very, very end of this cycle. I would expect, and I'm not one to make predictions. I'm a trend follower, so I'm not smart enough to know exactly when things are going to happen or what's going to be the catalyst. Who knows? I've learned that I can make a lot more money by following the trend than I can by trying to predict it. But based upon my own cycle work, based upon the own work that I do on the technicals, I'm becoming convinced, the same way I was convinced that Bitcoin had bottomed back in December and was really starting to move higher. And I expect Bitcoin to go higher into 2020, even into 2021, based upon cycle work. I expect that we're probably near the end of this equity bull market without some sort of major intervention. And I think that might be what we're preparing for. I think the Fed knows this. I think that's why they're probably, kind of loading their ammunition and getting ready to bring rates down in anticipation of this economic slowdown that we're facing. And it's really sad, Kerry, because typically when if an economy needs to rid itself of excess, it needs to go through the recessionary period. And we live in a time now where recessions are just unacceptable. And the present must be the minimum. So your housing value, it's not allowed to go down. That's not acceptable. And your pay can't go down. And the price of tuition, the price of a stamp, everything has to just keep going up. And that's where we find ourselves. This is a very bizarre time in economic history. And it's tough for investors and traders even. I mean, this is a tough environment, no doubt about it. Even though we're making money on the way up, you're scratching your head, kind of wondering, how long is this going to last?
Yeah. And, we're similar in our investment orientation. We both look at cycles, and I follow the leading cycle people who are A, Martin Armstrong, B, Charles Nenner, and they're both pretty spot on. They both have different views. And my good friend Nick Santiago from InTheMoneyStocks.com, who's a great forecaster. So what's interesting is both Nenner and Armstrong agree that gold is going to go higher. Armstrong thinks it might be headed for a little pullback, which would be normal in light of the fact it went up 10%, 12% in a month. Nenner, but Armstrong also believes that the stock market will continue going up, kind of the melt-up effect, also inflation, where it will not be wise to keep your money in cash. And Santiago thinks we'll kind of go sawtooth on the market, probably higher highs later in the year or next year, but he's also bullish on gold. So it looks like the cycle people are kind of pretty close. I wouldn't call them unanimous. And cycles are many forms. We've got Elliott wave theory. We've got biblical cycles, which I know you're familiar with. We've got many different types of cycles, but they're all kind of converging here on precious metals, Jerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Orin Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Orin is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits, and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Orin's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Orin's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Orin trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orinresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Yeah, we turn bullish, technically speaking, on gold. We remain bullish long term. We view it as the beneficiary of poor monetary policies. And so gold just, kind of a perennial bull market in our mind, that it's just simply a way to hedge against the uncertainty. Makes total sense. But from a technical perspective, gold's not always uptrending. And so for those who like to trend follow or trend trade, what we do is we provide alerts. So every weekend, this is great for weekend traders or people, work all week long and then they just don't have too much time to trade, but they want to know what's turning up or what's turning down right now. And so back in February, I'm looking at our dates here that we put out for our members, and I see on February 1st, we called a new uptrend in gold.
Good time.
It's since kind of edged up a little bit. It hasn't been spectacular, but it's been pretty good. We've been bullish on palladium for quite a long time, and it just continues to be on a tear. We turned bullish on gold miners actually before we turned bullish on gold back in December of 2018, and gold miners have done well. But overall, the stock market itself, we've had it in an uptrend status, of course, for quite a long time. And we got a really big buy signal, a technical buy signal, one of the ones that we use internally, just a couple of months ago, which told us that we were probably going to have a new breakout. And sure enough, it's led that way. So we're certainly not betting against stocks. You certainly don't want to bet against an uptrend unless you have more information than the average bear. But yeah, gold, I see gold moving higher just simply from a technical perspective. It looks like it has quite a bit of room. If you look at a long-term chart of gold too, like, go back for like 20 years, you'll see that gold is really quite frank. Even though it's pulled back sizably from its 2011 highs, it's still really in a really big uptrend, and it's held that uptrend. So yeah, I mean, I think gold goes higher. I also think we had mentioned cryptos too. I also think cryptocurrencies are going to go higher as well. We had talked about this, I think, last time on your program. But yes. But I think that the Bitcoin advocates and the gold advocates are really kind of singing the same song. They're both against fiat currency. They're both against a reckless Federal Reserve. They're both against a national debt. They're both against unfunded liabilities and all of this. So I mean, they're both singing the same song. They're just kind of at war with each other, unfortunately. But and as we've talked about, most crypto guys don't understand gold. Most gold guys don't understand crypto. So if you have somebody who understands both, I think you're getting ahead. And we own both. I own 5% of my total investable assets have been in crypto since 2013.
Good move.
That's nice move. It's 5%. My wife and I discussed it. She's She's smarter than I am when it comes to money. She's a master's of finance, and I'm an economist. The economists usually the dumber guys in the room. But whenever we talked about this, we said, hey, let's just go 5% of our total investable assets in crypto, and if it blows up, then hey, we lose 5% of our total investable assets. But we have 10 to 15% in precious metals, mixture of gold, platinum, palladium, stuff like that, and then 5% in cryptos. And we've kept that since 2013, and it's far outperformed almost every other asset class that we have, including real estate and everything else. But and stocks. But I think having a diversified portfolio here is really going to come in handy, especially as the stuff kind of materializes. We really can't keep going down this path that we're on. And it's also very revealing, too, that America itself is losing its hegemonic grip. I just put out something on Twitter to the effect of what Germany, France, and the UK have recently done with the creation of Instex, which is basically this way to circumvent U.S. sanctions against Iran. So European businesses are not willing to listen to a presidential edict on Iran. They don't care. They don't care what the U.S. The U.S. actually, the sanctions used to actually have some teeth. Now even people like the U.K. just tell us to stick it. I mean, they tell us where to stick it. They say, we don't care what you say. So that they're continuing to deal with Iran, as are most other reasonable people on the earth, except for the warmongers here in the United States and in Saudi Arabia and in Israel, who are content to bring down Iran. The majority of the world, is not outraged at Iran. They're outraged at Saudi Arabia because they're the Mecca of all radical Islam, Sunni radical Islam. They're outraged at other places, but Iran's not too high on the list. The reason why the United States is so upset about Iran is because Iran is playing a strategic role with the rise of China. It's playing a strategic role with helping China access Europe. It's just a really negative thing for Saudi Arabia because they're Sunni and the Iranians are Shiite, and that's not really cool. They need to be Sunni, and since they're not, we probably need to kill them. It's kind of like Protestants and Catholics.
Yeah.
We had our own moment, where we said, hey, Catholics are bad, Protestants are good. Let's go kill each other. And we went through that process, and that's what they're doing now. Sunnis and Shiites are killing each other. One day they'll have an enlightenment, then they'll have an age of reason, and then they'll all want nuclear bombs like we did after we came out of our age of faith.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Well, hey, there's a lot going on in Iran. Isn't put the propaganda aside. They're just, let's just say that they don't have clean hands in this deal either. And who's the worst actor? Well, that's like a difficult thing to say because who the heck knows? One is as bad as the other. They're all politicians. So, when you get down to it, who do you believe? I wish I knew. But I will tell you this, that unlike the British hegemony, which just automatically transferred to the U.S. After World War I don't think this one is going out without a bang. It's not going to go out with a whimper the way the Brits did. So we're just going to have to see where this one heads.
That's a really good point. I think you're right. And the British might argue that they went out with a whimper, but I think history is probably true on that it certainly could have been a lot worse. The United States, probably not so much. I mean, you've even seen this with the recent tit for tat with China over Huawei. Huawei, just until last weekend, was a mortal threat to our national security. They were an absolute atrocious company, according to Mr. Trump and the Washington elites, that we absolutely positively had to stop at the peril of the entire world.
Right.
Then last weekend, we learned that as a negotiation trick, Huawei and U.S. companies are now married again. So this really reveals the absolute desperation that the United States has in trying to shoot an arrow at the largest economy in the world. We also may have brought this up last time too, but according to the IMF in 2014, on a PPP basis, China is the largest economy. It's not even a question. Yeah. China is far, far larger than the United States, economically speaking, on a GDP, on a PPP basis, if everything's fair, if everything's leveled out. Mm-hmm. And they're growing at a rate right now of they're doubling the size of their economy every 12 years. The United States is doubling. If you use the old rule of 72, the United States is doubling its economy on average about every 36 years. So by the time we double in size over the next 36 years, China's going to have doubled once, twice, three times. And they're already bigger. So over the next, 3 or 4 decades, we expect to see a sizable shift in not just economic power, which has already happened, but political power. And China is, I think, playing the long game. They have a very smart move here, the way that they're kind of moving forward. The U.S. is flailing about. It's bombing countries. It's going deeper into debt. It's operating without a budget. It has no plans for the future. It's railing on about socialism, which is absolutely absurd. Like in 2020, Kerry, one of the things that I dread as we move into the political cycle is that you and I are going to have to listen to the lecture on capitalism versus socialism. It's one of the dumbest lectures that we're going to hear. But it works for the GOP. The GOP really likes the idea of taking its quite frankly, oftentimes their naive base and using the socialism card on them, failing to recognize that socialism already exists all across the country and the people like it and the capitalists defend it. Yeah. I mean, you have socialism in the public education system. Everybody's fine with that. You have socialism in the Social Security system. Everybody's fine with that. You have socialism with Medicare. Hey, everybody's fine with it. So people pay into that. How can it be socialism? Well, if you only get back what you paid into it, I guess it's not socialism. But if you get a dime more than you paid into it, that's called socialism. How about this? The United States military. United States military, General Wesley Clark called the United States military the world's largest socialist utopia. Every single military man gets free single payer health care, Kerry. Can you imagine? Yeah. The insidious evil of single payer health care is afforded to poor people in the military. Isn't that something? And no one complains about it. They also get free tuition. They also get free daycare. Who pays for that, Kerry? We do. But there's no mention of it. But don't worry, because, Kerry, socialism is coming. It's coming in the form of what the wicked Democrats want to do. So this nonsensical kind of we fear socialism, but we love socialism is going to be all in our face through the 2020 election cycle. And it's not going to do anything to pay off the national debt. It's not going to do anything to solve the unentitlement or the entitlement programs that are unfunded that we have. It's not going to solve anything in the way of a reckless Federal Reserve, but it helps the people who are in power stay in power. So that's really all it's useful for. And meanwhile, while we're flailing about, making fallacious arguments about things that, are pretty ridiculous, China is making friends. It's dominating Africa. Its largest trade partners are now Europe. It's also courting South America. The United States is breaking up with allies. It's pissing off its allies around the world. China's making friends with allies. It's making new friends. So from a long term, from the long game, if you get caught up in all the stupid antics of Fox News and MSNBC and seeing all these stupid antics, they're always pushing on you, trying to get you to be outraged about something. Mm-hmm. That is going to fail. That's going to fail 20 years down the road, because nobody's going to care about that anymore, because everybody's going to be speaking Mandarin, right? Not 20 years. Yeah. And probably not even ever, because when you take a look at India, for example, India barring some sort of strange, unforeseen occurrence, they're likely to be much larger than China within, say, 70 to 80 years. So it's not certain that China will rule the world, but it's certainly, I think, the 21st century, Kerry, will be known as the Chinese century. I think that's undebatable. By future people, maybe it's debatable now, but I think in the future it'll be undebatable.
One thing about the future, don't forget, as Yogi Berra
it's very hard to predict.
Yeah, it's real hard to predict or forecast, especially the future. And,
Mark Twain.
Like what you're doing there is extrapolating current trends, and a
correct
trend in motion stays in motion until it doesn't any longer. And, China's been in this position before. They have tremendous challenges, and I'm not saying the U.S. doesn't. I mean, it's obvious to many that this could be a sinking ship. But, China, environmental stuff going on there, if anything is going to get them, no rule of law. We had a rule of law here once upon a time, but that's been deteriorating. Nobody can dispute that for sure. The rule of law gets weaker by the day, fascism, etc. So the Chinese have tremendous challenges to realize this goal. Right now, capitalistic totalitarianism has worked really well, but in the future, who knows how well that's going to work. So, but the problem is that it's not supposed to work at all, according to the theorists. The theorists who often point to free market economy or capitalism, they'll point and they'll say, well, in a perfect world, capitalism works out perfect. It really does. It looks great on paper. The problem is you find out people are greedy. It turns out that people, when they get power, guess what? They don't want to give it up. And we don't have capitalism here anyway. That's the other thing. We haven't had capitalism here, Jerry, since the end of World War I, arguably. We've had some kind of hybrid system, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So,
underneath pure capitalism, the way that it was envisioned at the beginning of the country, I mean, you had human capital, you had human labor, in the form of slavery. I mean, that made capitalism pretty easy. But when you move forward and you actually have to pay people, and then you have to treat them fairly, and then you have to actually pay attention to their rights because they have rights given by God, just like everybody else does. Then suddenly, what looks good on paper, this capitalism that looks good on paper, it becomes impossible. So capitalism on paper is impossible to enact in the world. The socialism on paper may look fine, but when you enact it,
it always fails.
It fails. And so capitalism, but it comes back. But it comes back, Kerry, I think, not to. And this is where I come from a biblical perspective, or maybe a Christian perspective, is the fact that I don't believe that people have the ability to be perfect. And so therefore you can never have a perfect system. So capitalism looks great on paper, but who in the world is able to live up to its ideals? Who has ever been able to? So if you go back to the early time, you say before World War I, well, that's true, but you also had Jim Crow laws, what would capitalism look like back during that time if they didn't have half of the country underneath their thumb? So I would probably just take issue with the fact that capitalism is somehow distorted today, and that it can somehow be better because people can do better things. I think what we're suffering from is the fruit of our own excess. I think we're suffering from the fruit of our own folly. Not that we failed to follow a diagram properly. I feel like this is the result of men who are just simply imperfect, acting out something and quite frankly failing. And that's why that also kind of lends to the whole 4-year cycle where we have a new president every 4 years. It's just almost ad nauseum, because the next guy, this is the most important election, Kerry, right? 2020 until 2024, then that's the most important election. And the next guy is going to solve it. Yeah, that's it. The next guy will come in. He'll have great ideas, and he'll be uncorruptible, and he'll be able to solve it. But no, this guy failed. So the next, this next guy, he's from Harvard. You'll like this guy. He's really going to solve it. Wait, here's another guy. That guy failed. Here's a new guy. And this is what America has just been. It's just been one failure after another of attempting to take something on paper that looks perfect and make it work. And it turns out the joke's on us because humans are imperfect and they can't be perfect.
Yeah.
It just simply can't. So it almost seems too simple to even make the argument. But from my perspective, I guess is perhaps cynical. Maybe that is cynical, but that's how I view it.
Well, what did Winston Churchill say? Democracy is the worst system in the world except for all of the others. And
that have been tried.
Yeah,
right?
and none of them work. All of them fail.
Correct.
But
so why would we expect this one to work?
But all the other systems all expect a person to pursue the common good ahead of their own good. And it just doesn't work that way. It never will. The first thing you care about, after yourself is your family. And you want to see them, you want the best for your family, like everyone. So right there, when they say, all right, we're going to take a half or 2/3 of your income, then right there, it's failed because it's just not counting for human nature. So the question is it better to have everybody more or less going about pursuing their own benefit and their own furtherance of their own interests? Or is it better to have the government actually mandating what the interest is of the whole? And the way that the system was designed initially by our founding fathers, and granted, we had slavery. Nobody can deny that. It was horrible. And, but at some point, slavery was not the reason for America's success. All right. It just wasn't. Yes, there was benefits to some, but most people didn't even own slavery. It didn't own slaves in the world. So the key to the fact of what worked and what made the country great at one time, which we've certainly gotten away from, is the fact that that people were free to go pursue their own interest, and as long as they respected the rights of others, they had the possibility, certainly not the guarantee, of actually succeeding and improving their lot, their family's lot, and by extension, the country's lot. Now, did it work for everybody? No, but it worked for far better than any other system that had been tried.
Well, and one point to bring up there is the fact that you talk about, recently we've seen a deviation from that where people seek their freedom. I mean, one of the most obvious areas that's been the case is in the treatment of cannabis plants, plants that grow out of the ground, for goodness sake. I mean, a plant, Carrie, a plant that you grow in the ground that has never killed anyone that, to my knowledge, being demonized to the point where I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of citizens of the United States have been jailed or fined or have some sort of punitive, or they lose their job, or whatever the case might be over a plant. And we're slowly seeing that evolve. We're slowly seeing that change. That's one of the big areas that we tend to watch are cannabis, cryptos, and China. Kind of the three things that we see kind of coming at us quickly. China, 3 C's, if you will: China, cryptos, and cannabis. And cannabis, we just had the legislature in Illinois decriminalize cannabis. That's a huge blow, I would imagine, to the Chicago Police Department, who has relied for such a long time upon throwing minorities in jail for possession, and the private prisons, which make a killing off of these laws, which are now kind of turning. And so, I think cannabis is an area that maybe, say, again, if we extrapolate the current data, we go 10 years down the road, I think that many of us will be very familiar with cannabis brands, will be familiar with cannabis retail outlets, will be familiar with CBD brands that, we may or may like.
Yeah.
Now is the time, I think, for individuals who, kind of see what's coming to maybe start doing some due diligence in that area if they haven't already, and pick out some winners. I mean, think that's going to be a very large market, much larger than perhaps we can understand right now.
I'm going to take a little issue with you on this. And let me tell you why. Because we've had let's see, when was it banned? In the 30s. So we've had an 80-plus year prohibition. And demand for the evil weed, devil's lettuce, has done nothing but go up during that time. But demand was able to be satisfied from illegal sources. Okay. Now we've got it legalized in 11 states, I guess. I thought Illinois actually legalized it, but maybe I have it wrong. But I think
you're right. No, it is
states.
legal. It is legal.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. The demand has been satisfied through the illegal market. And therefore, unless you buy that the demand as a result of legalization will go up, often it's the opposite case. So what's going to happen is that demand will go up a little bit, but it's not going to go up in accordance with where supply goes. It'll go up 3 to 5% per annum. Let's just say that. I personally think it might spike a little bit in the beginning, and then it's going to go down because the taboo of the evil weed is going to be gone. So then you're going to have the illegal people, the non-taxed providers, and you're going to have the taxed providers. And the fact is, I don't think branding is going to work on the production level. You go into these stores, I've been in them in Washington State, in California, which incidentally has botched legalization beyond all belief. And you go into other states and you see that the branding doesn't matter because there's 500 different items on their menu. It's amazing the plethora of things. When the free market is left on its own to provide, it inevitably over-provides. So now you've got the legal fighting the illegal, and the government will, of course, come down on the side of the legal because it means revenue, just like it's illegal to produce large amounts of moonshine. So there will be a fight, but it's going to be impossible to control it because it was impossible to control it when it was illegal. It's not going to be any better now that it's taxed and licensed, etc. So the only branding that is going to work, and this is in my humble opinion, all of you out there free to disagree, is branding at the retail level. And that means distribution. And it seems to me from the people I've talked to, it's the retailers that are making the money. And when you look, unfettered, unregulated markets, Washington State, Oregon, they've got way more cannabis than they need. Oregon has a 5-year supply. Many of their dispensaries are behind on their sales taxes, which are substantial. So this thing has got a long way to go to shake out before there is the Canadian Club or the Cuervo of cannabis or the Marlboro of cannabis or the Eli Lilly of cannabis. And you know that all of these companies are circling the wagons, chomping at the bit to get into this market. But the point is that there's way overproduction. And we're not even getting into synthetics, which no doubt will increase. And one other thing, I just want to make the point, cannabis is not harmless like any other substance that you ingest in your body. I do believe that it increases the likelihood of psychotic episodes, especially the edibles. We've seen, especially in women, have real bad tolerance for edibles and have nasty episodes that take place. So we're seeing a market that's in its infancy, got a long ways to go before, you've got these dominant brands in it. I just don't see it. But hey, if I'm wrong, I will stand corrected. I was wrong about the resurgence of Bitcoin for sure, although I still do think that eventually the governments of the world will conspire to shut it down. And we're going to have to go to another standard of crypto that doesn't rely on limited nodes, that has unlimited nodes, but that's a aside. In any event...
Let me comment on that, because what you said about cannabis is very interesting. And I would say that most of those points, respectfully, were made about alcohol during the time of its. I mean, hey, it's easy to make. You can, all you need is all you need is a little bit of corn, or you need a little bit of wheat. Whatever you're needing, you just get those ingredients, and hey, everybody can make it at home. So you'll have lawyers showing up at, on the wrong side of town to pick up their moonshine.
Mhm.
When they can legally go into a clean, well-lit store where it's legal, and they can purchase a myriad of brands that they've had advertised to them, that they've been told that they're supposed to buy because it'll make them feel good or it'll make them popular or whatever. Marketing works, and in this area we haven't had marketing. We've only had dodgy kind of dealers who dispense it out of their one-bedroom apartment or whatever, and so it becomes problematic. And so there's a lot of people, I think, Kerry, who don't consume cannabis in any form, but they do consume pharmaceutical drugs, maybe for things that cannabis would help them with. And the only reason that they don't consume cannabis is because of the taboo around it, or because they just don't simply trust dealing with some drug dealer. What, did he lace it with something? I don't know. So the thing is that once you actually have a regulated market, I think the demand that is going to be there, like we've seen in Colorado, like we've seen, as you mentioned, even in Washington and in Oregon, yes. And California, have they flubbed it? Yes. Are we early in this stage? Yes. Are there going to be lots of mistakes made? Yes. I mean, absolutely. Are there fundamental supply demand issues? Yes. I mean, there's no doubt about any of the things you've said there. But taking a longer term viewpoint here, I think many of the concerns that you've addressed could have certainly been used and were made about alcohol. I think over time we'll see a well-regulated market. I don't think you'll ever banish the black market. I'm sure there's still bootleggers out there and moonshiners out there selling alcohol. I don't know them. I never met them. And the other thing too is
that
a
hazard.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is that you have, as you mentioned, cannabis is not harmless, but but let's talk about alcohol. I mean, I think the other really bizarre thing about the cannabis prohibition, aside from the fact that it's absolutely positively, its prohibition was racist in its origin. Anybody who disputes that, go back and read the work of Henry Anslinger from his testimony to Congress. But
we know that.
Absolutely racist. I mean, there was just no doubt about it that it was a racist law to begin with. But on top of that, you have these family groups and here I'm a Christian, I'm a believer in the Bible, but I take issue with the pro family groups who adamantly stand opposed to any kind of medical marijuana. And yet, Kerry, and maybe I've said this on your program before, maybe I haven't, but they don't take any issue with me going down to the liquor store and buying copious amounts of alcohol. It doesn't matter how much I buy. There's no limit. There's no limit on how much alcohol I can buy at the liquor store, Kerry. None. There's no family group who said you cannot buy more than one bottle of vodka because it's dangerous for your health and it's dangerous for your soul. Nobody has done that. There's no law about that. Nobody cares. I could drink myself to death in the middle of a ditch and no family group would come to my aid. But if I want to grow a plant in my backyard, Kerry, stop the press, right? Throw the guy in jail, whatever the case. Now, I'm not growing a plant in my backyard for those listening, in case you're wondering, but I'm saying if I did. So I find it to be, I think the newer generations that are coming up are saying now alcohol is completely fine for me to drink, even though it'll kill me if I ingest it with pharmaceutical drugs pushed by these docs. And yet this plant that grows out of the ground, I can't have because black people use it and I shouldn't use it because of that. It's absolutely innate. And as far as the research that's been put out on the ill effects of cannabis, absolutely. But stack those up against the ones about alcohol. Stack up those studies against the ones against pharmaceutical drugs that kill you whenever you pop them.
Let me go back. I believe that all drugs should be legal because prohibitions don't work, and call it the libertarian side. Probably drugs like fentanyl need some additional control. Drugs that are easy to overdose on, you need to have some type of controls so that people aren't melting them down in spoons. And hey, look, there was never a case to be made for it being banned. Prohibition for cannabis. Totally agree with you there. I'm just saying now don't want kids to use it. Obviously, developing brains can't be good to have altered states of consciousness induced by drugs, and that the risks need to be better understood. Of course, the damage to society and individuals is far greater from alcohol. There's not even a dispute about that. It's just that safe usage, personally, I'm thinking edibles shouldn't be an industry because there's too many factors. The whole concept of vaping needs to be studied. We need a lot more information. But in the final analysis,
I would jump on that. I would jump on that train too if the solution would be to change the repercussions, for the use of cannabis. So in other words, the use of cannabis and all of that is not nearly, I think, as dangerous or negative as the reactions of the government to the use of cannabis. So they've destroyed families, they've destroyed people's lives, but
there's no dispute on that.
Yeah,
there's no dispute.
Sure.
We know this for a fact. And largely because the government prohibited research on the drug, we don't know all these side effects. So this is directly a result of the government being involved in it. I mean, I'm for out and out legalization of all drugs because government just does such a bad job, and government's very act of prohibition puts tremendous value-added premiums here and corrupts and everything else. We didn't have a mafia till we had alcohol, till we had the war on alcohol. And the very prohibition is what gives these things tremendous value. Really, a half ounce of marijuana should sell for about the same thing as a price as a bottle of oregano. And that's what it would sell for had the government not stuck its nose under the tent, because it's really not worth more than that. And you'll see that, there aren't people breaking down the door to become oregano growers. They're established. Or the guy that makes the Tabasco sauce, Michelin, I think it is, something Mick. I mean, there aren't people breaking down the door to grow those peppers to make Tabasco sauce, because the market's legal, easy entry and exit. So, and really with alcohol, it would be the same thing, where if the government didn't put such huge obstacles to get into the production of alcohol, we would have, $2 bottles of vodka in the liquor store. But the government has other ideas, and because so much tax revenue accrues to them as a result of it, the controls and the standards and everything else, that's what we deal with. So we got to deal with the world we have. I agree with you. There was never a justification for it to be banned in the first place, and there's no justification for it to be regulated to the extent that it is now by states like Colorado. And a lot of these states' early success is a result of them having a monopoly. They become the Las Vegas of cannabis. That's what Denver, Washington State, Oregon effectively became the Las Vegas, the only place you could go legally buy it. And then people are shipping it all over, narco tourism, all these things. So let's just legalize it in all 57 states and call it a day and stop with the nonsense, and then let the market develop on its own. Just have a flat excise tax for everybody, and let's move on to the next thing. So, Jerry, one of the main reasons why I follow your site, why I follow followthemoney.com, is for this very reason, because you actually propose solutions. We were talking pre-call. Most of the world, they just bitch about things without any hope of ever solving a problem. And then when somebody does try to solve it, they're even more upset because it's they wanted a solution. You're getting your solution and you're still not happy. So solutions orientation on your site, and that's a very practical approach towards finance, towards life. Let's look for solutions. Let's not dwell on problems, because Einstein said, and I know it's worn out cliche, the same level of thinking that brought on the problem cannot bring on the solution. The same level of thinking that created these economic systems that are choking us, and every economic system in the world is asphyxiating its participants to one extent or another. Doesn't matter where it is. It's all the same. Solutions here. And solution always has to be with the individual, right?
That's so correct. And solutions are so important right now because the problems are just overwhelming and becoming larger on a daily basis. And if you get on social media, for example, if you happen to do that, you'll find there's an outrage every single day. And it's always something that you're supposed to be outraged about.
Outrage of the day, and of the moment.
Yeah, it's the outrage of the moment. And you got to get all bent out of shape about it. And then what do you end up doing? Nothing. Nothing really, but you know about it and you're angry about it. And it's usually in your echo chamber. So, usually you hear something from within your echo chamber that reinforces the fact that you're in that echo chamber so that you stay in that echo chamber so you can hear the next outrage that comes. And, one of the classic examples of this, and I don't know where you stand on this, but I would say, for example, Google, Facebook, Twitter, when it comes to social media.
You know where I stand on this. You know where I stand on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they're private enterprises. They're private enterprises. And thanks to the United States Supreme Court case, Citizens United, corporations have rights, right? They have rights. They can do what they want. They can, within reason, they can do what they want. And they can change, what they can do. You know what private enterprises can do, Kerry? They can change the terms and conditions at will.
At whim. Yeah.
Happens every day. But thanks to the ongoing political propaganda, thanks to the echo chambers that exist out there, public access to the socials is considered a God-given right, like a gun or like, the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. The right to use these private enterprises for your purposes, unrestrained, is a God-given human right. And private enterprise must bow equally to all people because we're economically illiterate. That's why.
Yeah.
So I started my first website in 1997.
Yeah.
And I never trusted the social media outlets as a business owner. I don't know about you, but
here. I've never been Google sandboxed me 5 years ago. Yeah. I don't know why. And I just said, to hell with you. You're not part of my business model. Goodbye.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I didn't know the platform. I don't own Facebook. I don't own Twitter. I don't own YouTube. So, and I knew I would be subject to their evolving terms and conditions. So as a United States citizen, as I understand private enterprise, I understand private industry, I built my own platform on my own servers so I can make the rules, because centralization equals censorship. So as long as Google and Facebook and Twitter remain centralized, which they probably always will be, they're going to continue to wield their legal corporate right, and it's a right apparently given by God from the Supreme Court.
The gods, the gods in the black robes.
Yes, to censor their communities in a manner that maximizes profits. So many people get bent out of shape about Facebook and Twitter, say they're trying to muffle the voices of the right, because the political right are trying to get their message out, and Facebook they're liberal, so they don't want right to get out. Nice try. Nice try, but you don't understand economics, because that's not how economics works. The Facebook is interested in not promoting a political agenda as much as they're interested in promoting maximization of profits. So profit maximization becomes the key. And if that means siding with one political party over the other because it maximizes profits, so be it. It doesn't matter to them. So the politics around this whole issue are loony, and they obscure the exit door, which is blockchain. It can't be censored. So the whole time these people are fighting about, is Facebook, being political, or is Twitter, they lean too far to the left or whatever, that they're ignoring the exit door. So it's a classic answer. It's a classic example and a good answer to your question of solutions. A classic example is this Facebook, Twitter, Google, political loony nonsense. Well, there's a solution. The solution is blockchain.
Yeah.
So you have firms like Tron and Ethereum, and you have many of these other blockchain projects that are creating another internet where there's no censorship.
And there's no domain names either. You don't care about a domain name of a crypto blockchain enterprise. It doesn't matter. All you care about is the wallet.
Yeah. And so there are solutions to these problems, but they're not as fun to go actually implement those solutions as it is to sit in your lazy boy and complain about them, right? It's much easier just to sit there and type out 160 characters about how you don't like it, as opposed to actually getting up off of the lazy boy and actually creating a solution. And I think that's what's lacking. is that those listening to the sound of our voices today, the best step forward here is not to just continue looking at a screen and feeling paralyzed about a world that's spinning out of control and that you can't control. But it's important instead, as you mentioned earlier, to focus upon you and yourself and your family. You know, if you know more about what's happening in Washington than you know what's happening in your child's bedroom, there's something wrong. You know, if you know what's more about what's happening, if you know everything from drudgereport.com, if you know every single headline from there, but you haven't had a sit down discussion with your wife for 30 minutes, you know, in the last month, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with our society. And what we need to do is we need to focus upon solutions, and the solutions come in the form of saving. The solutions come in the form of diversification. So we don't just save a whole bunch of US dollars. We save those dollars and then we say, now how are we going to diversify these? Maybe we need some silver. Maybe we need some gold. Maybe we need some crypto. Maybe we'll want to have some affordable housing and real estate. Maybe we want to start our own business and participate in private enterprise and enjoy the corporate rights that corporations get to receive. I mean, maybe instead of always complaining about them, why not use them? So there's a lot of solutions. And like you said, on followthemoney.com, we're very solution oriented, sometimes to a fault. I don't want to make light of certain issues and problems that we face. But at the same time, Carrie, you and I both know that those are evolving problems. And if it's not, it's like a whack-a-mole. You end this one and you've got another one, and you end this one and you've got another. So in other words, instead of making that your life's mission to stamp out all these problems, it's probably smarter and more healthy for you, and certainly more constructive for your family and for your future and for your legacy, to focus upon solutions for yourself, for your family, for your community. So that includes things like prepping. And one of the things that we put together for free, people can go to, is just followthemoney.com/5 levels. And our 5 levels of financial freedom. I actually lectured on those at one of your conferences many years ago, the 5 levels of financial freedom. And my wife and I used, we described step by step everything that we did to break free financially. I was working at a job and that I liked. It was okay, but I wanted to be free. I wanted to start a part-time income. And slowly but surely, we went from, kind of what I would call wage slaves to being free, to be able to pursue our callings, because we had learned how to diversify our income, to diversify our savings, to diversify our investments. And we continue to do that. And we look for new opportunities. And so that's why we brought up earlier China. That's certainly an area that I've been investing in and trading in. Cryptos, that's an area, as we mentioned, I'm invested in. Cannabis stocks, we've certainly played those this year. We have a long-term view. We also have a trading strategy for those. So, I mean, that's not all. There's many others. And so people can go to followthemoney.com and learn, from our free podcasts and our 5 levels and our book we've written. There's lots of stuff there. Yeah. But I guess the takeaway there, to really fully answer your question, is yes, solutions are the key. And in a world that's just filled with problems and outrage, it's a nice, refreshing alternative.
And that is a great point. And, we always look on the Financial Survival Network for people with solutions, not people who just want to complain. Because, hey, you just turn on the media and then the complaints, it's all about dividing you. It's all about making you not see the picture, the real picture that's in front of your very nose. And that is what you have to be concerned about. Anyway, Jerry, so followthemoney.com, and we should go there. What do you got for us there?
Yeah, we have a free podcast when you go there. If you go to followthemoney.com /email, we will, and just enter your email there, it'll put you on our weekly email list. We send out a newsletter every week. It's completely free. You can get that. And that newsletter will share with you investing ideas, charts of Bitcoin, charts of the US dollar, charts of gold and silver, and our latest commentaries and thoughts. You'll get a lot of free stuff. You'll also get several free reports whenever you enter your email address. And we don't share your email address with anybody. We're very careful. We don't send out very many emails at all, one a week. And you can always cancel if you don't want it. But then maybe when you start getting the email, you say, wow, this is good information. I want more. Well, then we have memberships, and we have a silver, gold, and platinum plan. And it all depends what you're wanting. If you really want to trade cryptocurrencies or trade stocks, then we have a full-blown education unit just for that. If you want to learn, how to be a better long-term real estate investor or make money with real estate, we've got an area for that. If you want our latest cryptocurrencies that we're buying and you want to know which ones we own right now, we have a report for that. I mean, and on and on and on. I could go on, but I mean, you can go to followthemoney.com and see all of the different services that we've been providing. We've been doing this for a long time, as you know, Kerry. We're not some Johnny-come-lately. We've been at this for a long time, and our goal. We've helped a lot of people over the years. I mean, helped a lot. Every day I'll get emails from people, who are saying, "Hey, I just bought my first rental property," or "Hey, I made a bunch of money on this crypto," or "Hey, thanks so much for this valuable service." I mean, we get lots of great testimonies from our people because, again, we stress solutions. So we're not bogging them down with just, constant outrage where they're just walking around outraged about everything every single day of the week. Instead, they're learning how to exploit the world around them for profit, right? The way that the system has been completely set up.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, followthemoney.com.
It's such a great point. Love your work, Jerry. I always love speaking with you. It's always a different take on things. And you need that because to be in the echo chamber is not really a good thing. It's too easy to wind up in the echo chamber, and then you just look for external validation of what it is you believe in. Anyway, hey, you'll see the link, as always, in the show notes to this interview on Financial Survival Network. Click it. Go check out Jerry's work. Don't forget, contest entry. Last date is July 14th, 11:59 p.m. and the email address kl@kerrylutz.com. Don't forget our Twitter feed is @KerryLutz if you care about such things, and our Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Jerry, always great talking to you. We will catch up with you again later.
Kerry, it was an honor to be on your program. Thank you for having me again.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.